Welcome back. Welcome back. Today I want to share with you guys how I went about creating this UI for this analytics looking type dashboard. It was created with Tailwind Nuxt 3 and I think some of the styling stuff from Shatsian. If you're not aware, Shatsian is a React based component library, and that's a library with air quotes because um it's not a component library. It's just a collection of reusable components that you can copy and paste into your apps. I actually built one of these, but I'm thinking about recreating it because of how the different components are structured in that app and whatnot. But I'll share that some other day. You can actually find it here. Nuxt UI is what I call it. And essentially it's the Shadcn stuff for Nuxt 3. So you can go and just copy and paste the different components into your project whenever you need them. So this is source code. You can just install the stuff that you need, copy it, paste it, and everything should work. But like I said, this is work in progress. It's nowhere near complete. So yeah, that's that. So back to this thing, I'm going to start by creating a new application. So let me just create that folder and open it with VS Code. Open that with VS Code. Just put it over here. And we're going to start a new Nuxt project. npx nuxi at latest init dot to create it in this folder. Once the files are created, we can go ahead and install the dependencies with yarn. After installing the dependencies, we can just go ahead and start setting stuff up. So I have a Nuxt 3 profile in VS Code, and these are the extensions that I use. The ones we're mentioning now. This one, Nuxt, Prettier, Vue language features, Volar, and the TailwindCSS IntelliSense extension. I think those are the ones that we'll be using for the most part. All right, cool. So let me just go ahead and reload this page or this window. Once that's reloaded, we can go ahead and set up Tailwind CSS. So we open the command palette and just type in framework. And we have from the Nuxt extension the option to configure a CSS framework. Now these are the options. I'm using Tailwind, so I'm gonna go ahead and check all three options, click OK, and that will install the Tailwind CSS module, create the configuration file, and create the CSS file. And you'll see that in a bit. All right, so the files are created. I'm going to convert this to a TypeScript file. So let me just edit this, change it to .ts. I'm going to import from Tailwind CSS the config type. I'm going to export default this object, and the type is going to be partial config. Cool. Now the Tailwind CSS module already adds some defaults to this configuration, and we can see them by going to, let's see, Tailwind Nuxt, the documentation, and you can see the defaults and whatnot. If you don't change anything in this file, then it should work, but we don't need all of this. So from the Shatsian website, like I said, the configuration that I use is actually from here. If you go to the manual installation steps, this is the configuration that I usually copy from, but I don't need everything from this configuration in my project. The CSS variables I do need, so I can actually go ahead and copy this and just paste it into my application, which is this one here. So come over to here, paste that in, hit save, just remove that, or can let it stay. That's fine. Let's see, what else do we need? So let me just copy and paste the configuration that I need here, and I'll just explain it after doing so. So let's see, copy this, paste it in. We need the font family from Tailwind CSS default theme. So let's import that. All right. So the first thing that we're extending is the container object. We want it to be centered by default. And this is the padding settings that we want to use. So by default, meaning on mobile screens, the padding left and right will be 1 rem, small screens 2 rem, LG 4 rems, XL5 to XL6. We are going to be using the intervar font. So we just set that right here and spread the default fonts provided by Tailwind. As for the colors, the philosophy used by ShadCN is a foreground background concept, where for each color that's defined, we have the background, which is usually the default color, and the foreground, which is usually the text on that background color. So in the CSS file here, you can see we're in root, we're defining these variables. And to understand more about how to define CSS variables to use them within your Tailwind config, you can just visit the Tailwind docs and you can see more about that. Let me see. So if I go to Tailwind and go to colors, let's see. Down here, using CSS variables, you'll actually learn more about how to define variables and use them within your configuration file. Cool. So back to VS Code. Here we're defining the HSL values for background in root. So this is light mode color definitions or CSS variable definitions, and this is dark mode definition. Cool. So each color is defined. The background is the website's background color. Foreground is the website text color. So let me just disable notifications for now. No more interruptions are cool. So the muted color, foreground for muted, popover color, foreground for popover, border and input. This is different. This is self-explanatory. We have an input field, we give it this color. On light mode, this color on dark mode. Cool. So that's basically it for how the CSS variables are defined. As for the configuration file, we use the HSL color function to register these variables. So you can see we have HSL var, and then we register the border CSS variable that's defined over here. The beauty of this is CSS will actually take care of switching out these values once you move from light mode to dark mode. So in light mode, it will register this border value, and in dark mode, it will register this one. So next we want to install the Scrollbar plugin. And that's a Tailwind CSS plugin. So we can do yarn add, a dev dependency, Tailwind Scrollbar. Then we can import it up here and register it down here. I'm going to pass an option to this, non-compatible, and set it to true. And you can visit the docs to learn more about what this thing does. Let me see, Tailwind scroll bar. So this is the documentation for it. Non-compatible mode. Let's see, where is that? So these styles are only available in the no compatible mode, and they won't have any effect in Firefox. So no compatible, setting no compatible to true will add a few utility classes that are not registered if you don't pass this object in to the plugin when it's registered. So let's see, I think that's it for our configuration file here. I think we can move on to the Nuxt config. Yeah. So in our Nuxt config, we want to add a few modules. So I'm going to use the Nuxt R extension for that. I'm going to add the icon module. So you can search for it and just click install. And you can see it's added here to our modules array. We want to add view use as well. I usually use view use for light and dark mode instead of the color mode module. That's just a preference. You can use a color mode for light and dark if you want. For headless UI, because I'm going to use a headless UI in this project, usually I use the Nuxt headless UI module. So let's just install that. I think this is a bug with this extension. Each time I install a module, I have to basically leave and come back. Hopefully it gets fixed soon. Next module is the view transitions module. And for this one, I think the issue is with the actual package, and I'll show it to you in a bit. Whenever it's registered, it doesn't register the Nuxt version or the Nuxt module. You have to actually add that manually. So to the end of this one, you have to add /Nuxt for it to work as a Nuxt module. Next, we want to configure the Tailwind CSS module. So here we're just exposing our configuration file. We want to also configure the headless UI module, and the only option that you get here is the prefix option. So by default, I think the prefix is headless UI or headless, but I shorten it and just use a capital H. So this will allow us to use like the menu by just saying H menu. Yeah, so that's what that does. Next we want to configure the font for the website and the global title. So I'm just gonna title it analytics. That's how you spell it. Hopefully that's how you spell it. And I'm going to add the interfont. So we want to add an object to the link array within the head object that's inside the app object. And we want to say style sheets. And then that's the font that we're going to link to. And we also want to do the pre-connect. So change the relationship to pre-connect. And that is it for the font setup. I'm going to get an icon from Logo Ipsum. Let me just go ahead and grab that real quick. So Logo Ipsum, this one. So I can just go ahead and copy the SVG, right? And then back in VS Code, I can just come here, create a new file, icon.svg, and paste that in. All right. I also want this icon to be the used as a fav icon. I think that's how you pronounce it. So I'm gonna come here and say, thank you, Copilot. So that's what I wanted to do, except this should be icon.svg. Good. So now we won't be using any the pages directory in this application. We will definitely have the components folder. So let me just use the Nuxt extension to create these folders. So I want components, that's fine. And in our app.view file, we're just going to outline what the structure for application will be. So we have the header at the top, that's going to be a component. And then we have the sidebar, not main, not just yet. Then we'll have the main section. Right? Then we will have the within the main section we have the status cards, right? And then we'll have a little scrollable area with the customer list. Next up, we'll have the sales chart. And for this, we'll be using chart.js and Vue.js. And then we'll have a table with some orders. Now to the left, we'll have another div. And this is basically the profile section. And let's see, profile info. And then a few reminders. So let me just show you the application again so that we're not confused and we actually know what we're referring to here. So this is going to be the header, this section. This is the sidebar for the menu items. The main section, so we have the status cards, we have the customer list, we have the chart and the table with orders, and then we have the little reminder section here. Cool. So let's jump back to VS Code and start creating these components. So first we have the header. So right click here, create view component, call this header. Let me just close the others. And in this header component, we have quite a few things. Let's first start by changing this to header tag. The class that we're gonna apply is a sticky, top 0, z index at 20. We want to set the border to the bottom. We want to give it a background of the background color that we defined in our Tailwind config file. Give them that an opacity at 80% and give the backdrop a little bit of blur. Cool. Next we want to add a flex container that will hold the actual items within the header. So we're going to give this a class of container. Flex, give it a height of 16, align the item center, and justify content between. Now we want the logo. So we're going to create another div. flex, make it a flex container, align the item to the center, and give it a gap of 3 in Tailwind world, which translates to 12 pixels or 0.75 rem for the rem people. We want to add our logo. So this is the logo and the page title. And this is the logo. We're going to add the image, and we're going to point to the SVG image that we created earlier. Give this an alt, analytics logo. We're going to add a class, height 7, width 7, and object contain, because we want the whole image to show at all times. We don't want it to get cropped or anything like that. Next, we want to add the page title, which is essentially a Nuxt link that's going to go to /, and here we have analytics. So let's add a class XXL and make it bold. Now we can go ahead. Let me change the language to TypeScript. We can go ahead and register this in our right here. So we can say header, save that, and let's run this and see if it's working as it should. Let's close the live one and take a look at the one that we're creating now. And there we have it, looking good so far. I think we can close these. So back in VS Code, the header, let me minimize that. So we're done with the title and the logo. Next we're gonna tackle the right side of the flex container. So here is where we want to say, so this is the right side. Right side of the header. I don't know why this is green. That's weird. But whatever. Let's create another div. Wait, what's happening? Div. No. Okay, I may need to reload this thing. Okay, it seems to be working after the reload. Anyways, new div. Make this a flex container as well. Item center, gap 5. And in here, we're going to have the button that will toggle between light and dark mode. So create a button. And remember, we added the icon module earlier. So we're going to give it a name. It's going to be hero icons. I'm going to say sun. Right. I'm going to give it a class of h5 with 5. Now for the button itself, let's add some classes to the button. We're going to make it a flex container. Give it a height of 9 or width of 9. Set the shrink to 0. Item center, justify center. Make it fully rounded. Add a little border and give it a background of the background color that we set in our Tailwind configuration. Now we're going to use, like I said earlier, Vue use to change between light and dark mode. So Vue use actually has a composable called use color mode, right? And with this, we can create a function called toggle theme. And this is what it will essentially do. It will set the mode value. It will check if it's currently light, then switch it to dark, else switch it to light. So let's go ahead, let's save this and add the click event here, toggle theme. I guess we can set this label as well, ARIA label as well. Let's take a look at the website to see what it now looks like. And by default, once this composable is used on a page, it will check to see if your system is using like light or dark mode. Change your website to match your system settings, and then you get the option of switching between the two. Cool. So back to VS Code. Now we have theme switching out of the way. We want to add that little drop down, to our navigation, and we're gonna add it within this flex container that our button is in. So right here, we want the profile drop down menu. Cool. And we're going to use the headless module for Nuxt. So we're going to say H. And once I type H, you can see where I'm getting the auto completion for all of these headless UI components. The one that we want is the menu component. And we're going to use this as a div for now because we want to add a class to it. Most of the root elements for headless UI view, they're rendered as templates, and we can't add classes to templates. So in order to add the class to the root element, which is going to be relative, we have to render it as a div. Cool. If you try to add the class without changing the element that it's rendered as, the app will just crash. Yeah. All right, so next we want to render a button, and this button will be used to trigger the drop-down menu. I'm not sure why Copilot is suggesting this code, but that's not what we want. So let's escape that. H menu button. Yeah. And we're going to use the same class as we did for this button up here. So let's just copy this down. And within this button, we're going to render an image. Now, this image will be coming from the random user API. So randomuser.me API and just get image of a man. And we're going to give this an alt of logged in user and add some classes. So we want it to be full, width, and height. Now, if we save this and go to our website, we can see where this is square. It's not rounded, and that's because its parent is not clipping the overflow content. So we have two options here. We can either make this image rounded, or we can add the overflow hidden to our parent container. So let's just go with that option, overflow hidden. Hit save, and if we go back, ta-da, rounded. Now when I click on this, nothing happens because I haven't defined the menu items just yet. So let's just go ahead and do that. So headless UI menu items, let's go with H menu items, right? And we want to add some classes to our menu item. We want it to be absolutely positioned, 0 pixels to the right. Let's give it a Z index of 10, margin top of 3, and a width of 48, which translates to 192 pixels. Next, we want to add some border radius, so rounded MD. We want to add a little bit of border. Set the background color. And for focus, we want to set the outline to none. Focus visible. So this is when focus visible is when you use the keyboard to navigate a focusable element. So these are the styles that we want to add when that happens. So we want to set a ring of 2, and focus visible ring should be, the ring color should be the ring color variable that we set here. Where is ring? Ring, this color. So let's save that. And then we want to add a little header to this menu. So I'm just going to go ahead and create a div. Add a border bottom, add some pixels to the left and right, to the top and bottom, and make the text small. So let's save that. And the first thing that we want to add is a text that says, hello, John. This would be your logged in user's name. We want to make this semi-bold. And below that, we're going to add the email for John. So we're going to say mail to, and let me use a multi-cursor feature to type in the email. So it's going to be John Doe at test.com. And of course, we're going to go ahead and add some styles to the email. So we're going to say let in none, text muted foreground, and that should be it for the little header section. Now below this, we want to add the actual menu items that we can navigate through. So here we create a div, add some padding, and then we want some menu items to loop over. So instead of writing out each menu item like this, right? 1, 2, 3, I'm going to create an array and then loop over these items. So the profile menu items is what I'm going to loop over. And you can see here where I have this divider set to true. This is just to add a divider in the items. And you'll see how I do that just now. So up here, we create a template and we say v4 p, which represents the actual item that we're looping over, I representing the index of that item in the profile menu options. Of course, we want to set the index as the key. And then we're going to say render this line if the item's divider is set to true. So only when we have p.divider set to true should we render this line. And I'm going to give it a class margin top and bottom. So let's hit save right there. Now for the actual items, we want to use the h menu item component, and inside of this we'll render p.title. Now for this to look good, of course we have to add some classes. Let me see, do I want to add the classes here? No. So let's create an actual button, because I think this component will be rendered as a template as well. So let me create a button, render p.title here, and add the classes here. So on the button, we want it to be inline flex, width full, align the item center, give it a little border radius, give it some padding, make the text small, make the font medium. Now the headless menu item component actually provides some items via vslot. So here we can actually get the active property for the current menu item. And what I'm going to do with this is I'm going to change or add a class based on this active state. And this, I think this can be true or false. Let me just look at the docs so I'm not telling you rubbish. Headless UI, the view tab, menu, and if you go down to the API, the menu item provides an active slot, which is a Boolean, right? And it states whether it lets you know whether or not the item is active or focused, right? We also have the disabled Boolean property. So if an item is disabled, we can use this to style it, and the close function. So this will, let's say you want to render a link inside the menu item, and that link will navigate to somewhere else on the inner application. Sometimes that, because a link is clickable, it won't actually close the menu. So this is just so you can manually close the menu. All right, back to the code. Here, we're going to say, we're going to bind this class. And I like to use the array style when binding class, because I can do stuff like, if active is true, then apply these classes. And the only class that we're applying is bgmuted. So let's save that and see what it looks like. So when we click on this thing, our menu pops up. And this is the header section with the email. And of course, we have the menu items. We can see here where we have this being rendered. And that's because the the divider object within the array is being registered as an item. No, we don't want that. So what we're going to have to do is add an if statement here that says, if not p.divider, then render this. And that should fix that. So if I go back here, you can see that it's gone. And our divider only gets rendered here, because in our code, we put the divider between sales and log out. And of course, you can add a click function here if you want and do something. Let's just alert log out for demonstration purposes. So here in the buttons click, we can say p dot click, and if it's there, call the function. If not, we do nothing. So now if we go back to the website and we click on this thing, we get the alert and the menu closes. Cool. So let's just remove that. We don't want that functionality. Yeah, let's remove this as well. There's no click property on any of these. All right. As you can see, when the menu entered or got displayed on the website, there was no transition. And that's why I always use this package when I'm developing applications, because it's an easy way to add nice transitions to your Nuxt application. So this package actually provides a few transitions, and let me just go to their documentation so I can show you. View transitions, here it is. And you can take a look at the playground to see what the different transitions are. We have the fade, expand, slide, and scale. You can use them in a group, mono. You can use them as a single thing. So that's how they work. Of course, the documentation will tell you how to install it, how to use it with Nuxt, and all of that good stuff. So back to our code, the transition that I want to use is the scale transition. I'm going to put it over the menu items, because this is what we're actually transitioning into the view. So we're gonna say transition scale, and we can set the scale. I'm gonna set it to 0.8, and I'm going to set the origin. So I want it to come from the top right. Yeah. Now let's just close that up there and close it down here. So now when we go back to the website, we have this nice transition, the menu items coming in. And of course, clicking away does the same thing. Yeah. Also, to note, we can actually, once we bring up the menu, we can use our keyboard to go through the different items that are in the markup under the H menu item component. So you can see that I can't navigate to the header up here because this is in a div. It's not in a H menu item, but these are. So I can use my keyboard, go up and down. Cool. Back to VS Code. I think that's it for the header of our website. Next, we can move to the sidebar. So the sidebar is going to be its own component, right? Let's go ahead and create that right here. So we say sidebar, and let's just register it right here. Let me just reload this so I don't get any weird TypeScript stuff happening with VS Code. So we're going to use an aside tag, add some classes to it. So we want it to be sticky. We want it to stick to the top, but 65 pixels from the top. And we're going to give this a height. And I'm going to use an arbitrary value here. It's going to be 100 virtual height minus a 65 here, right? So that's going to be the height of this container. And we want to give it some padding top and bottom of 5. Cool. Let's change this to TypeScript. Next, we want to add a div here. And this div will actually have the items that will be displayed in the sidebar. The sidebar is going to be, let me see. Let me just go ahead and add the classes to it. So we want it to be a flex container. We want it to have height and width of 100%. And it's going to be, the flex direction is going to be column, right? Because what we're going to do is we're going to add 2 sets of menu items, one at the top, one at the bottom. So the first, let me see, overflow Y. Gonna set that to auto. Gonna give it some border radius. Gonna add a border, and we're gonna set the background color to card, right? And this color was actually defined as well, as you can see here. We're gonna give it some padding at the bottom, and we're gonna use the scroll bar plugin to customize what our scroll bar will look like. So without the scroll bar, I'm going to show you what that looks like, and then I'm going to add the classes afterwards so you can see how exactly it changed. Now for the items that will be rendered, I have a few menu items here. Let me just copy them over, quite a few. But obviously in your application you would have different menu items. So here we have the bottom menu, which just have one level of objects where we have a title and an icon that we want to render. So we have settings, help, logout. So this one is basic. For the menu that will be displayed at the top, however, you can see where we have items within the menu item. And in order to render these properly, so it will scale well. So if we want the items within this thing to have items of their own, we can actually do that without breaking anything in our markup up here. So how we go about doing that? We'll have to use a recursive component or a recursive component. And that recursive component I'm going to call sidebar item. Cool. Now the sidebar item, it will take in as a prop. So let me just register the prop. So cons props equal to define props, and this is not it. I'm going to say that I will take in an array of links, right? No, I'm just going to type it as any, but in your real application, you should actually give this a type. I could give it a type of this title, icon, potentially items. So if you want to be super type scripty, you can go ahead and add your own type or interface here. I'm just going to use any for now. So to our sidebar item, we're going to add flex and flex column classes. And then we're going to loop over the links that are passed in. So for li in links, we always want to set the key. We're going to say we're going to render a Nuxt link. And for now, this won't go anywhere. Let's just send it to the home page. But we're going to say in this Nuxt link, I want to only render it if we don't have nested items. So this Nuxt link will be rendered if this does not exist. So for these and for this, we don't have the items array in it. So it will render this Nuxt link, right? And what we want to render is the icon. So L.icon will be rendered here. We're gonna give it some classes. So a height of 5, width of 5, and we're gonna mute the text color. So that's that. Next, we want to render the title. So we say L.title and add the truncate class. Cool. Now, in order for these to be displayed properly, of course, we have to add some classes to the Nuxt link itself. So we want this to be inline flex. Oh, inline flex. Want items to be aligned centered. Give it gap. Wait. Gap of 4. Let's add some padding to the left and right of 4 as well. Top and bottom will be 3. We want the text to be on the left, and we want to change the font height to 15 pixels. Yeah. So if we go ahead and register our sidebar item here and pass in the items that we want to render. So let's just go ahead and say sidebar item, and we want the links to be menu. If we take a look at our website now, we can see where we have this being displayed, and it looks weird for now. We're going to fix that in a few, but you can see where only one item is being displayed despite us having many other items. And that's because this is the only item that does not have the items array within it. So now we're going to deal with rendering the items that have sub items, so to speak. Now we're going to use the, why is this rendered like that? We're going to use the disclosure component from the headless UI package. So we're going to say h disclosure, right? And we are going to say velse. So render this if there are no sub items or if elder items does not exist. Else render this thing. And of course, for this one, we want to render pretty much the same thing that we did up here. So we can actually copy some of the stuff from up here. So let's just render the disclosure button. And this will be used to expand the collapsible area. You'll see how that works in just a minute. So we can copy this class. All right. And then now within the disclosure button, we're going to render a div that will have our icon and title on the left. And then on the other side of this button, we're going to render the drop down icon. So let's set a gap of 4. And in here, we want to say render this thing. And I probably should add an if statement to this because we may have items that don't have an icon. So let's just add that condition right there. So if l.icon exists, then we render this thing. And to the right of the button, we're gonna add another div, and we're gonna add another icon. So this icon is going to be the, just like it suggested here. Let's add a transition to this because we'll be rotating this icon. So transition, nice. So this, let me just show you what it looks like now. So you can see here we have some little drop down icons to the right of each of these items that have items within them. Cool. Now to render the sub items, we're going to use the disclosure panel, and we're going to loop over the sub items and display them, right? So how this works right now, if we expand one of the disclosure panels, we don't have the ability to rotate them easily, but the disclosure actually provides the open variable via slot, and then of course we can use conditional classes to rotate this icon. So if open is true, then we want to rotate this 180. Cool. Below the disclosure button, we actually want to display the items that should be rendered from this sub items array. So I can come here and I can say that I want a disclosure panel, right? Let's give it some classes. So we want margin left and right of 6. It should be flex direction column. We're gonna add a border to the left and padding left and right of 3. We also want this to have nice animation, so we're gonna go ahead and use another component from the Vue transition module, and we're gonna use the expand one. Cool. So inside this disclosure panel, we're going to go ahead and render or loop over the sub items. So we're going to say for, did I use I before? I think I use I. Let's say I, J in L dot items. We're going to set the key to J. And then we're going to render a Nuxt link. Yeah. So what we're going to do is add some classes to this Nuxt link. And it should not be navigating to anywhere. Then we're going to render the title. No, I think this is one way of doing the recursive thing. We can use the sidebar item within itself. But I'm not going to go down that part just no. So let me go ahead and save this. This should work for what we want to achieve. If I should look back at this thing, you can see where it's being rotated, the icon, and the items are being rendered. Cool. Let me test it out to see if I added sub items to this, what would happen? Let's see. Just add that right there. Go back to the website. So which one of them was that? This was customers. Okay, so that's not working as intended. So like I said earlier, probably what we need to do is instead of looping over the stuff, we could call sidebar item again and pass the links this way. Now I think by doing this, there we go. We can have an infinite amount of nested items. So if I should go here and add another nested item, and let me just demonstrate that in the code. So if I copy this and paste it in here, save that, go back to the website, have customer, list, create, and it goes on and on and on and on and on. Cool. So let's just get rid of all of that madness. Save that. And I think I missed a class somewhere up here. Disclosure button, inline flex, items, this should be justified between. I was wondering why the icons were next to the text, but it should be on this side. All right, cool. For the sidebar, that's it. We want to now render the items at the bottom. So let's go and add that over here. So we want to say, let's render, since it's a flex container and the direction is column, we can add a class to this to push it to the bottom of the container, origin top auto, and then we can render the sidebar items again with these items as the links prop. So if I save that, come back here, you see them down here. All right, that's it for the sidebar. Let's see what we have next. We have the main section. Before I go to the main section, let me just go ahead and add some classes to this div. We want it to be a container on large screens. We want a grid, and on large screens as well, grid column 12. And large screens, want to give it a gap of 10. So let's save that. We're gonna add some classes to this as well. We're gonna give it a padding top and bottom of, no, not padding. We want it to be hidden on smaller screens and displayed on larger screens. We also want larger screens for it to take up 3 columns. So we give it a call span of 3 on large screens. Hit save and let's see what it looks like. No, and there we go. We have our sidebar. Oh, scroll bar. So this is the native scroll bar to Windows. But we installed the Tailwind scroll bar plugin so we could actually change how this thing looks, right? So let's go back to the code and change that. So back in the sidebar component, we're gonna add the scroll bar utility classes. Now I'm gonna add scroll bar thin, and I think this will add an 8-pixel scroll bar, if I'm not mistaken. Let me just save that and look back at the website. Okay, something. Oh, so the scroll bar is registered. We just can't see it because we didn't add a color. All right, so let's just add that color real quick. So scroll bar thumb, and the thumb, sorry about that. The thumb is the part of the scroll bar that you actually drag to go up and down. And we want to give it this input color. And this is a color that was registered, of course, in our Tailwind config file. Now, in addition to changing the color, we also want to change the border radius. So we want to change the border radius of the thumb. So we're going to say scroll bar thumb rounded MD. Hit save. And of course, you can add utility classes for the track color and all of that. So if we go back to the website, we can see where our scroll bar now looks a bit better. Cool. And I'm not seeing the border radius on the scroll bar thumb, so maybe I misspelled something. Let's see, scroll bar thumb button, scroll bar thumb. Weird. This is a correct class. Not sure why it's not being registered, but that's okay. Next, let's see. Next, we have the main section. Let's add some classes to the main section. So padding top and bottom of 5. And on large screens, we want this to take up 6 columns. So the LG, what's this called? The modifier, a variant, I think. On large screens, we want this to have 6 columns. So let's save that, and we're gonna add our status card component. So we can come here, right click, create a view component, status card, hit create, and start adding the markup for our status card. So this is gonna be a section, and it's gonna be a grid container with a gap of 5. And on medium screens and up, I want it to have two columns. Cool. I don't need any script in this file, so let's remove that. So we're gonna add the revenue card and the sales card. Yeah. So the revenue card is gonna look a little bit like this. We know how to style a card. Let's give it some border radius. Give it a border, a background of card, and some padding. Yeah. Now within the card, we want to display some information. So we're going to use a flex container for that. Item center and justify between. And the items that we want to render, the first one being a title, going to say total revenue. Add some classes to this. We want it to be smaller, font size, and font weight medium. Next to this is an icon. We're going to set this shrink to 0 and render the icon here. So it's going to be hero icons. We're going to use the banknotes icon. Banknotes. Yep, that's the one. We're going to give it a height of 4 and a width of 4 and change the color to this one. Of course, you need to close up. Now below all of this, we want to add the actual stats. So we're gonna render some random dollar amount here and style it. So we want it to have some margin from the top. We're gonna increase the font size and we're gonna make it extra bold. As for the text below it, let's add something like 20% more than last month. And then we want to make this text very small. And we're gonna mute the actual color. So here, let's register that component. Go back to our website. And this is what we have. So we can see the heading at the top, the icon on this side, the actual statistics, and this little helper text down here. So this in itself could be its own component for larger applications where you're going to be using this type of card on, let's say this is the analytics dashboard. Let's say you have a products dashboard and you need this card. I recommend extracting this card itself into its own component and passing in the title, icon, stats, and this sort of thing here. Cool. So because I'm only using it right here, this should be its own component as a stat card. But I'm just gonna go ahead and copy this and change the different values. So this is gonna be sales. The icon, I'm gonna change it to credit card. And let's say we had less sales. And it's the increase is less as well from last month. So if I save that and go back to the website, we have two cards. Essentially same structure, just rendering different information. This is why I said you probably want to extract this in its own component for larger applications. All right, so that's it for the status card. Let's see what's next on the shopping block. So we have the customer list, right? So this one is somewhat easier to implement. We are going to, let me see, create a new customers. component. And this is going to be a section. Give it some margin from the component above it, which is this thing. Let's just register it here. I'm going to say new customers. Yeah. And in the new customer component, let's give it a heading. This really should be like an H3, and it's going to say new customers. Let's add some style. Let's make it bold. Yeah. And below this is where we want to add or list the new customers, right? Now, the information that I'm going to use for the new customers is going to be coming from the random user API as well. And I'm going to use the use async data composable from Nuxt. Now, I'm not sure if this is best practice. I think this will work because I'm not using pages. I'm just using the one app.vue file. But usually the user sync data composable should be used in page. Let me just confirm. User sync data. So it's a composable meant to be called directly in a setup function, plugin, or route middleware. Oh, so it can be used in the setup function, not necessarily a page. So that can be pushing data outside when the page hydrates. When the page hydrates. Okay. So I think it can be used in a composable. I know there are some composables from Nuxt that can't be used outside of pages, like the define page meta, like the name suggests. Page meta, obviously it should be used in a page. I'm not sure the other ones, but I thought this was one of them. It's good to know that I can use it anywhere. All right, back to VS Code. Let's see, use async data. This snippet is provided by Nuxtar, as you can see here. So first we give it a key. I'm gonna say it's new customers. That's the key. And the fetch request is going to be not from the JSON API, but from the random user API. All right. We're gonna pass some options in as well. I want the default value to return an array, an empty array. Right. So I'm going to call on the transform function as well, which is going to be data.result. So what the transform function does is it passes the data that's returned from this fetch request, and then you can actually manipulate it and return the properties or values that you want to use or that you want to get stored in this data value right here. Cool. So I'm not using these other things passed back by the user sync data. I'm only interested in the data right now. But the random user API, if I should click on it, it should return, as you can see here, it returns this object, and within the object we have the results and some metadata. And currently I'm interested in the metadata in the results array and not the metadata. So that's why in the transform function, I'm just returning the results and storing them here. So let me just type this as any to get rid of that squiggly. And I can go ahead and save that. And up here is where I'm going to render this data. Cool. So let me start by adding some classes to this. So margin top 5, flex, full, items, start, not center, gap of 6. And because I wanted to scroll On the x-axis, I'm going to give it an overflow x of auto. Going to add some border radius. Going to add a border. Change the background color. Add padding to the top and bottom, left and right. And because this is going to overflow, I am going to add the Scrollbar utility classes as well. Again, Scrollbar input, so that changes the color. Scrollbar rounded MD should change the border radius. Let me look at this thing. I think this is the problem. It's not non-compatible, it's no compatible. It should be no compatible, not non-compatible. Let me just save that, restart the server to register the plugin. All right, so within this container, this flex container here that will be overflowing, we want to register another flex container, right? Shrink to 0. Set the flex to column. The item should be center and a gap of 2. And this is going to be the button that will be used to add a new customer, so to speak. So if this were a real application, this button would be used to add a new customer, right? So we're going to say the class is flex, give it a height of 10, a width of 10. We're going to make sure that the items are centered. We're going to give it a border radius of 100%, rounded full, or 9999, I think is what it's set to. Yep. And then we're going to give it a background color of muted. Now inside of this button, I'm going to register an icon. I'm not going to change the color, but I'm going to set the height and width to 5. And the icon is going to be the plus icon. So let's save that. It's registered. Let's see what it looks like on our website. So I can close this now. And as soon as we restart, we now have this plus button here. Now, after this plus button, we're going to add all of the customers or the users that are returned from the random user API within this container. Cool. So back to VS Code. The new customer component, we're gonna say below this button, let's add the text add before I forget. And we're gonna give this a class text sm and make the font semi-bold. So that's it for the add button. Next, we want to, like I said, render the users that are returned here. So we're going to say v4 n in data, right? And no, shouldn't do this like this. Ni, just so we can add a key. As that squiggly there. Anyways, he's gonna be I. And this is going to be similar to the container up here, where it's going to be a flex item in the column direction. So flex, gonna shrink 0, flex column, item center, and a gap of 2. And we want to add the image of the user that's returned. So we're gonna bind this source data, well, n in this case, because n represents a single user from this array. So n dot picture dot thumbnail, yeah, and the alt text is going to be n dot name dot first. So this is the first name of the person that's returned from the API. We're gonna add some styles to this image. We want it to have a width and height of 10. It's 40 pixels. We're gonna make it rounded full, and we want it to be object hover. So let's go ahead and save that. And below the image, we want to display their name and that type of thing, some other meta information. So we're gonna say center the text as displayed here. This should be P, and it's gonna be n dot name dot first, and then n dot name dot last. Cool. Let's add some classes to this. We want the text to be small and the font to be semi-bold. Next up, we're gonna add some meta information. So let's say they were online 10 minutes ago. Of course, this is probably not the best way to add it because each record will have this 10 minutes ago thing, but that's fine. So I want this to be XS. And change the text color to that muted color. Now if we should go back to the browser, then we should see a list of users. And if we scroll across, wait, what's happening? Oh, scroll across to see the different people. Yeah. So these are the users returned from the API. And this is the scroll bar. You can see now we have the border radius on the scroll bar because we updated the Tailwind configuration, and we should see the same over here. Nice. All right, so that's it for the new customer section. Next we have the sales chart. Now for the sales chart, we will have to install the Vue.js package. So let me just go ahead and grab that real quick. So we want to say Vue.js. And where's the installation guide? This is the one we want. Let's just add these. And while that's being installed, we can create our sales chart component. And in our sales chart, let me just go ahead and close this and register it here. The yarn dev. So the sales chart, like I said, it's being rendered with chart.js. It's gonna be dummy data, but at least you'll see how you can actually add a chart to your application easily. So I'm gonna go ahead and add some margin top and give this title, sales over time, add some class. So I want to make this bold, right? Save that. And then now we're going to create the container that will actually render our chart. So let's give this some margin top. We're going to give it some height, 300 pixels to be exact. We want to add some border radius. So rounded LG, background color. And on medium devices and up, we want the padding to be 3 all around. Now here is where we'll add our line chart. Now from the chart.js documentation, we have to import a few things. So let's just change this. And we want all these items from chart.js. And then we want to import from the Vue.js package, Vue.js, we want to import a line, right? Also, we're going to be using some of the colors from our Tailwind configuration. And that's why I added the expose config here so that we can actually reference our configuration within the application. So I'm going to say Tailwind config slash, and we want the theme, and we want the colors from the theme. So we're just gonna, let me just bring them in as colors. And then now once we have the line imported and the chart.js stuff imported, we can go ahead and register the different plugins from chart.js or components. You can learn more about this by visiting the chart.js website and the Vue chart.js website. So here we have to register these things in order to use the chart of our choice. So we say register, and we want to register the category scale, linear scale, point element, line element, title tooltip, and legend, right? Now, because we're going to use the color mode to display different grid line colors, I'm going to go ahead and bring that in from Vue use. So use color mode, register that there, and then we're going to define the different options that would be passed to our line chart. So we're going to say const options, and this is going to be a computed property, and it's going to be of type chart options of type line. Yeah. So of course, this is going to be a function, and we're going to return an object. So when you add the type like this, we can press Control and space and get auto completion. Cool. So we want this to be responsive. We don't want to maintain the aspect ratio. So let's set that to false. And now we don't want to display the legend. So we're going to say plugins, legend, and set the display to false. And also we want to update how the tooltip behaves. So in the plugin object as well, we're going to set the intersect value to false. When you set intersect to false, I think what this does, like it says here, if it's true, the hover mode only applies when the mouse pointer intersects an item on the chart. So unless your mouse is exactly over a specific point on the chart, a data point on the chart, you won't get a tooltip if this is set to true. But when it's set to false, once you hover over the chart, the tooltip will be displayed for the data point that your mouse is closest to. Cool. Now, in order to change the color of the grid, we want to go into the scales object. And for the Y object, we're going to say that grid, we want to change the color, right? And this color is going to be based on the current color mode. So if it's dark, then we want to say this should be slate 900. But if it's light, We want it to stay at slate 200. Now we also want to update the ticks. So we can say ticks, and we want to update the color here to be colors.slate 500. Yeah. Now we want to do practically the same thing on the x-axis. So I can go ahead and just copy this down, change this to x. It should be the same. It should be the same. And that's it for the options that will be passed to our line chart. Now for the data, we're going to say const data, and this is going to be a ref of type, you guessed it, chart data or line. Yeah. And this tool will be an object. The labels are just going to be the months. So let's see, let's do one more, July. And then the data set represents it's an array of different data that will be displayed on the chart. So first, let's set the label, and the label is going to say sales time. Let's set the actual data that will be rendered. So here we'll add the data array. So we just create this array and add some random numbers. Of course, these numbers would usually come from some API of the sort, but for now, we're just going to add them. And we can add other configuration here, such as we can change the background color for the data set or for the line. And I'm going to use colors dot background from our colors config up here. Next, let's change the tension. I'm gonna set this to 0.4. This just determines how sharp the edges or the connection points are going to be in the line chart. Border color, let's just use this. Colors are blue 500. I'm gonna set the border width as well to 2. The point background color, I'm gonna set that to colors blue as well and hit save. Now we want to actually render the line chart here. So we're gonna come here and say line, which is the component here that's imported from Vue.js, and we want to pass in the data and the options and hit save. Now I think we already registered that. The application is running. So let's look at our browser to see what's happening. And it's reloading because we restarted the app. And we have this nice chart. Now, when I set the option on the tooltip and set intersect to false, if intersect was true, let me just change it back to true so you can see the difference in behavior. So let's set this to true, save, and go back to this. You have to, when you hover over the line chart, you don't get the tooltip. You have to hover on the exact point. See? But when this is false, the tooltip shows up for the data point that your mouse is closest to. And you can see where the light and dark is actually being used. The color of the grid lines actually got updated once we updated this thing. See? Cool. All right, so let's see what's next. Next, we have the recent orders table, right? It's gonna be a simple table. Let's just go ahead and create this. So recent orders. As always, we start by giving it some margin top and giving it a title, recent orders. Let's make this bold. Save that. We won't be using any data for the table. We're just going to use the same data in a loop. So for our table, we want to, if you want your table to be responsive, it is recommended that you actually put it in a parent that has the overflow CSS property set. So in our case, we're going to give this margin top of 5, set the overflow X to auto, give it a little bit of border radius, add a border, add a background color, and then add the scroll bar utility classes. So scroll bar and we want the color to be input. That's what we're using. Let's see, we can set the scroll bar to rounded MD as well. So this is the container that will actually hold the table, right? And of course, we have the table. We want to set the width to full and set the border collapse to collapse. First, we have the head. So that's TH. We're gonna have one row in the head, and we're going to add some utility classes to this. So we want the bottom to have a border, the bottom of the first row to have a border. We want the text to be aligned to the left, and we want the text to be small or extra small. Now for the th, these are the different columns. So we have product, payment, status, and we're gonna have this empty header for the actions section. Now using the multi-cursor feature, we're gonna add the same classes to all of these headers, table headers. So padding of 4, want the font to be medium, we want them to be uppercase, and we want to change the text color to text muted foreground. You can just go ahead and save that and move on to the table body. Now, like I said, we're just going to loop over the same items for the table body. So we're going to use a for loop and say n in, it's about 6 items. And we're going to add a class to each row. We want the row to have a border at the bottom. We want the text to be aligned to the left. We want the text to be small. And we want the last item in this list to not have a border at the bottom, right? So I'm going to set border bottom 0. And whenever we hover, we want the background to be muted for each row. Now we're just going to go ahead and add some data. So we can just say something like shoes. And let's give it some padding. So that's a padding of 4. So this will be under the product column. Next is the payment. So we want to say it's paid or not. The status column, one that says, is it shipped? Is it pending? Whatever that status will be. And then now for the last column, this is going to be an action item. So we're going to make this one a button. We're going to render a button in this, or a few buttons inside of this column. For now, we're just going to do one. So let me just add this just in case we want to add more. But for now, let's just say we want a button and we want to render this icon there. Name is going to be hero icons pencil. And the classes that will be added, height 4 with 4, and we're going to change the text color. So let's close that and save. And if we import that component for recent orders and save, go back to the website, this is what our table looks like. So you see when we hover over each row, we have this BG muted color coming into effect. When we click on this thing, we could add some action of the sort here. It's doing nothing now. This is what the heading looks like, and these are the items. You can see the bottom, the last row in the table body, it does not have a border bottom. If it did, it would actually clash with the border that's around the entire table. So now that the main section is done, this side is done, we can move to the information that should be displayed over here. Let's close this, let's close this. And for that part, we're going to create a component within this div, and it's going to display the profile information of the logged in user. So let's add some utility classes to this. So on mobile, it should be hidden. It should have padding top and bottom. On large screens, we want it to take up 3 columns, 3 of the grid columns, because we assigned 12 to large screens. So this is going to take up 3 of the 12, and it should be displayed on large screens as well. Since it's being hidden on all screens here, we want to change that. So on large screens and up, it should be displayed. So let's create this component called profile info. And profile info is a simple component. It really is just going to have the image of the logged in user and the name of said user. I can go ahead and get the link here. You just grab the link on the alt from the header, since it would be the same person. So let's grab that, and let's change the classes applied. So we want this to be centered, and let's give it a height of 28 and a width of 28. Wants to have around full border radius. Want to apply a light ring around the image just in case the user uploads an image that has white background, or white background against a white website background. You wouldn't be able to distinguish between where the image stops versus where the background starts. So this little ring will help with that. So let's go ahead and save that, and let's import the profile card here. So it's a profile info, and look at it on the website, and this is what it looks like. So you can see the little ring around the image. Oh, when I zoom in, the responsive thing is taking effect, but there's a little ring around this image. Back to the profile info. Let's add the name and that type of thing for the logged in user. So we can go ahead and add some utility classes to this. Let's give it some margin top and center the text. So first, we're gonna have the name of the person. So that's John Doe. That's logged in, and we want the font of this to be medium. Below this, we will have a p tag. We'll have some margin from the top. The text will be small, and the color of the text will be muted foreground. We're going to display John's email here as well. So it's going to be John Doe at test.com, and let's save that. We can remove this, it's not being used, and take a look at the website again, and this is what it looks like. All right, so that's it for the profile information. Next, we have the reminders that will be here. So let's create the reminders component. Yeah. And the reminders component will just have a list of reminders for the logged in user. We're going to start by giving the parent div class of sticky. And from the top, it should stick how many pixels is this? 80 pixels from the top. And we want to give it a margin top of 5 as well. Of course, we add this with the title to let the user know that these are the reminders. Next, we want to render a list. So let's go with UL, and I'm just going to copy and paste in a few reminders that I have prepared here. Let's change the language of this to TypeScript. And here we go. This isn't necessary. I'm not using any types. But I'm going to loop over these. So I'm going to use a template, v4, on R for reminders, index in reminders, and let's set the key to I. Then we're going to say we want to render a list item. And here, let's create a flex container. So margin top is going to be 5. I'm going to say flex item center and justify between. Now within this container, we're going to have another flex container. Item center, yeah, 3. And we're going to render an icon. And the name of this icon is going to be the check circle icon. So it's going to be here icons, check circle. What did I spell wrong? Hero icons. Yep, there we go. And we're going to add a class, height 4, width 4, text muted foreground. Close that. And then next to the icon, we want to add the actual title of the reminder. And we're going to make this text small, right? And then we want to add the time. So outside of this, we're going to add a span, and it's going to be r.time, and we're going to make the text small and make the text color muted foreground. So if we save that, go to the website here. Of course, it's not there because we didn't import it. So we're gonna say reminders, save that, back here, and there we go. You can see where it's actually sticking to the top for a bit. Yeah. And that's essentially it for the UI. If you have any questions, just let me know. Check out the source code. Definitely check out the Shadcn project. It's a really good one. Like I said, the one that I'm working on, I'll leave a link to it, but it's not complete. You can copy some of the components because most of them work. I think the part that's not complete is the documentation for the most part, just telling you how to get everything set up and working, and the starter template isn't there. But outside of that, it should be good. Let me see how responsive this thing is. So this is a desktop view. Let's go to this is what it looks like on the iPad, and of course it's going to be similar on a mobile device. Yep. You scroll across the chart and the table. Yeah, and that's it. All right, people, so have a good one. Until next time, bless up.